30 seconds, Sally.
Let's talk. Hello. Welcome to Let's Talk. I'm Sally Gibney. Our show today is Here Comes Summer. Any of you remember that song? Here Comes Summer, 1959, Jerry Keeler? Of course, I was just a baby then. But anyway, summer is coming in. It's the most wonderful time of the year. So today, my guests are going to help us with some key little hints as to how we can really, really enjoy summer. So first, I'd like to welcome Lynn Greiger. Hi, Lynn.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good.
Lynn, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, and a health, food, and fitness coach.
Wonderful. And my next guest is Peg Gregory. Welcome, Peg. Good
morning, Sally. Thank you.
And you are?
I'm a licensed social worker and a life coach.
Wow. We have a lot to share with you, so we'll be right back. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a registered dietitian, and that means I work with people on all different aspects of food and nutrition in a variety of different settings. And then people were always asking me exercise and fitness kinds of questions. So then I became a personal trainer, and a few years ago I decided to get some additional training and coaching. So now I'm a health, food, and fitness coach, which is an all-encompassing kind of a picture.
Yeah. Yep. Now tell us a little bit about when did you come to Vermont, and tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. I've been in Vermont 22 years in about a month, and I remember because our youngest son was just 2 weeks old when we moved here.
Oh, really? That must have been something.
Yeah, it was fun. So I had an 18-month-old and a 2-week-old, and we moved from northwestern Indiana to Vermont. My husband's a Vermonter. We met at UVM, and we thought that Vermont would be a really good place to raise our family. So that's what, and we just sort of moved to Vermont on a whim, and we've been here ever since.
Wow. Now, were you in this field when you moved here, or did you study afterwards, or how did that start?
I was a registered dietitian when we moved here. Yep, I'd been
Okay.
working in a small community hospital in Indiana, and when I first came here, I started working at the hospital in Bennington as the outpatient dietitian, so not necessarily with people in the hospital, but their physician would send them in to see me to talk about diabetes or high cholesterol, typically those two things.
Oh, that's neat. So you could kind of work around the family doing that.
It worked out really well, and the hospital has an on-site child care facility, so when the boys were little, they went there. But then we lived in Arlington when we first moved here, and when they got to be school age, life just sort of blew up. And
Which it does.
it was too difficult for me to be in Bennington working and the kids in Arlington, so I decided to go out on my own in private practice and work my schedule around the kids, and I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, and you've been doing so much. I remember you were on one of my first shows, I guess it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed with you because you gave so many hints that I still use today.
Well, that's good.
And
I'm
I
glad it
tell
stuck.
other people about, I say, Lynn Greiger says, especially looking at the ingredients and what's in things. Now, tell us, summer is coming, and can you share with us some things that we can all do that are going to be great for summer? Some of the things we may not think about.
I know, we've been waiting a long time for summer, I think. Yeah,
we have, haven't
it's
we?
about time that it's here.
Yeah.
And so one of them, so I'd work with people a lot around either fitness and exercise or nutrition. So this is a perfect time of year to take our exercise outside, although a couple of the ladies in the audience were running and walking with me all winter long, so they have been outside even in the cold weather.
And I've heard about that. I mean, even in the coldest of the cold, you gals were out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. That's what we like to say. Yes, but now that the weather is nicer, it's a really good time of year to go outside. So a lot of times people are used to using the treadmill or the elliptical at the gym, why not go outside and walk? We have beautiful areas to walk or run or cycle around this part of the country, and even getting a little bit of a mix in it. And when we're outside exercising, it really is a good stress reducer as well, just to be out in the quiet. Take your music off for a little while. The other morning I was out listening to the birds.
Isn't
and
it
you can
wonderful?
hear the wind. Oh,
I mean,
it's great.
really, it's just so amazing. I was out walking Princess this morning and just listening to the birds. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful.
You can feel your stress levels just really start to decrease when you go outside. And then I think too, it's less competition. Sometimes you see the person on the treadmill next to you and you think, oh, I've got to go a little faster. But when you're outside, you really don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you can kind of take your time. And now I like to walk. My husband, when I walk with him, he stops and he looks at the birds and he looks at the trees, and I'm, up there ahead of him. But you can really do it at your own pace, can't you?
Yes.
And do whatever works for you. And it's a really important thing. And I think you mentioned something the other day where even if it isn't something that's totally enjoyable, to do it.
That is true. A lot of times people tell me that they just don't like to exercise, and that's a real barrier for them. They may think, well, but I should get to the point where I enjoy it. And the reality is, not everybody is going to enjoy exercise. Some of you are laughing. and it can become one of those things that's on our daily checklist. I don't particularly enjoy doing the dishes, but I do the dishes every day. I don't particularly enjoy vacuuming, but I don't do that every day, but eventually I get to the
when
vacuuming.
When it needs to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
So for some people, exercise is like that. We may notice that when we exercise, it lowers our blood pressure or it lowers our blood sugar level. Or just that we feel better because we've gone out and done something active.
Exactly, exactly. I bet many of you feel that way when you're outside, and and it does. I find that it clears my head. Do you feel that way? It's really important.
It does, and I've been exercising for many, many years, but especially when my children were little, I just wanted to get outside, away from the house. No one was waiting for me to do something. I was working in the hospital then, and there's a lot of noise in a hospital.
And stress.
Right, and it was nice just to be outside by myself. And then over the years, I've really come to appreciate the social aspects of exercise, which are really important to many women especially, it seems, really enjoy exercising with someone else, because then we can talk and the time goes by really quickly, and you just don't even think, wow, I just went 4 miles.
Exactly. And also the camaraderie, the friendships that develop walking. I have a very special friend here, Paula, and we walk very often, and it's our time to be together and to share, and it really, it's good for both of us. We really enjoy it. Now, we were talking about food too, and the foods of summer and what we can do. Can you share some things with that?
And again, it's the farmers markets are opening up again, although we've got the winter ones in a couple of different areas, but in the summertime, I love to go to the different farmers markets, and you can mix it up.
Dorset just opened. This Sunday it was open for the first time.
Yep, so you can go Sundays in Dorset, Saturdays in Londonderry, Thursdays in Manchester, Saturday there's one in Bennington. And even when I'm traveling around, I like to see, is there a farmer's market that I might be able to stop by? And talk to the folks who are there selling things and ask them, what is fresh right now, what's something different that I haven't tried before, and it's a perfect time to say, what is that particular vegetable and what the heck should I do with that? And they will know exactly
and they'll give you recipes, I guess, as to how to prepare it and whatever. And you were saying the other day, I was asking Lynn about kale. And the benefits of that. Is that really as beneficial as they say it is, or you were talking about green leafy vegetables?
Dark green leafy vegetables are great. The darker the color, the more nutritional value it has. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, some people think that light colored vegetables have no nutritional value, and that's not true at all. There are phytochemicals, chemicals that plants produce to keep themselves healthy, and they're associated with color. And then when we eat those different colors of fruits and vegetables, we get the benefits of those phytochemicals ourselves. So if we can get a variety of different colors of fruits and vegetables, and even the white ones contain some of those beneficial phytochemicals.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
So kale is a great one. It has a distinctive flavor that not everybody likes.
And it's kind of tough, isn't it? Do any of you eat kale? It's so chewy.
And texture is something we sometimes forget about with food.
Yeah.
We don't often think about that, but especially with children, texture can become very much an issue for kids. So some kids really like crunchy kinds of fruits and vegetables, and some prefer them soft and mushy. And it doesn't really matter, but if you notice that in your child, or you notice it in yourself, then I would go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your special hints for us for now?
For now, I encourage people to break out of their rut and try something different, try something new. You can do that when you go to the farmer's market. You can do that at the grocery store if you go to Dutton's or Clearbrook Farms. You know, I think, and I see myself doing that in the grocery store. I go in the same way and I get my cart and I go down the aisles the same way I always do. And actually sometimes I play a little game to see how fast I can get through that grocery store.
Oh yes.
But
I think we all do that.
if you have some time, take a little bit of extra time and go a little bit of a different direction. Look up on the shelf, look down on the shelf, and see what is different there that maybe you haven't tried that particular item before, and you may discover something new and different.
That you really like.
Right.
Yeah. And now, could you please give us a couple of hints as far as getting into the groove of doing things, you know, of exercising and of, because you are such an incredible trainer and you work with so many different people. Do you find that there are certain things that make it easier than others?
I think everybody comes to that at their own time and space and when it's the right time for them. But thinking about the benefits of whatever change that we're going to make. If we decide that we want to eat more fruit or we're going to switch and drink more water, we think about, well, why is that important to me? Important to me personally. And I like people to listen to the language that they're using. If we say, well, I know I should be drinking more water. We don't really want to, but we think we should be. Or my doctor told me I need to eat less fat. I don't really feel like doing it, but someone outside me is telling me I need to. When we say I want to or I am going to, those are very powerful words. Even when we say I'm going to, try is kind of a wiggle word. We're not really
You can get out of it.
I think I'll try to run a marathon, but I'm not so sure I want to do it. But at least that thought is there in our mind, and we're thinking about it. And that subconscious thinking is crucial. Before we can ever start to put a plan in place, we really need to think about it. Why do I want to do this? How is it going to fit in my life? If I decide I'm going to start drinking more water, well, what is that going to look like? Am I going to drink the tap water? Do I want to buy some water? How am I going to carry it around with me? And sometimes I use the analogy of going on vacation. Has anybody ever just woke up one morning and say, yep, I'm going to go on vacation today. I'm just going to get in the car. I don't have a map. I don't know where I'm going. I probably don't even have any money, but I'm going on vacation. My 21-year-old son did that last summer, but most of us, and he's still surviving, most of us don't typically do that. And so we plan ahead. And part of the enjoyment is thinking about where do I want to go and why do I want to go there? What can I do ahead of time to make that vacation fun and worthwhile? And we can use those same skills in thinking about, I want to switch up my exercise from the gym to doing something outside this summer. What is it going to look like? Do I need some different clothes? What about sunglasses? Is there someone who would like to go with me? What time of day?
Where am I going to go?
Right, so if we plan it all out and think about it, then we are much more likely to actually do it.
And also you were saying that we shouldn't make judgment on ourselves. You know, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. We should just start. And then as we start, even progress and move into it.
That is true. We're often much more difficult on ourselves than we are on someone else. So we probably wouldn't tell someone, you idiot, why did you eat that chocolate brownie?
Because I wanted it.
But we wouldn't walk up to our friend and say that. Now my sister maybe, but we probably wouldn't tell our friends that. But we tell ourselves that all the time. We use that kind of self-talk. I'm never going to be able to do it. I just have no willpower. I can't do it. And
listen to what we say to ourselves.
Right.
You know,
if we're kind to ourselves, it makes a much bigger difference because often then we feel like, well, I'm just not going to do it at all.
If I don't, and if I don't do it perfectly, how many of us are perfectionists when it comes to ourselves? You know, we're so gentle with everyone else, but when it comes to ourselves, we make such rigid judgments.
We do, and often it's all or none kind of thinking. Either I am walking every day or I'm not walking at all. One of my clients the other day, she said, well, I just don't have time for 30 minutes of exercise. I said, what about 5 minutes? She said, 5 minutes counts? And I said, yes, it does, especially if you can do a couple of 5 minutes in the day, but even if you only do one 5-minute walk.
It's better than not.
Exactly, better than nothing.
Oh,
and she never thought about it that way.
Yeah, one thing, I always thought that unless you did it all at once, it didn't count. But that's not true, is it?
No, it's not true. And part of it depends on what your purpose is for exercising. But even then, there's some flexibility. So if we're exercising basically for good health and overall fitness, it all accumulates throughout the day. Yes, and that's why the guideline is to accumulate a certain number of minutes of exercise most days of the week. So it doesn't say you have to do 30 minutes every single day. That isn't the recommendation at all.
But what is the recommendation for exercise? Is there a certain amount that is considered healthy or wise for us to do?
The first one is 150 minutes of exercise throughout the course of the week.
Really?
So if you think about it, 150 minutes of exercise.
2.5 hours.
Right. It's not, and if you
That's
spread it
that's
out
doable.
over 7 days, it really becomes a much more doable figure. And that's a goal. So it may be that we're starting out here and we think, by the end of the summer, I can be at that point. Right now, maybe I'm at 60 minutes for the whole week. That's less than 10 minutes a day. Well, that sounds pretty doable. I can probably fit that in.
You know, remember when Chris Vanderharden was here and she talked about setting a goal and working towards that goal, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, it's the same kind of a thing.
And
exactly.
it works.
Yes, it does work.
Yeah, that's really neat. So you work with your clients, you work with them on a personal level, or then you work with, tell us just a little bit about the group, the marathon group.
Oh, and I have 2 running groups, and there's 2 ladies here who are from the half marathon group. So the half marathon group starts in January, and we do a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles, in March or April. We usually have about 60 women, and they walk or run or do a walk-run combination. All ages. We've had teenagers up to women in their 70s, and no one is excluded. The only requirement is that you're able to walk at least 3 miles before you start, and you have your physician's okay. After that, we gradually build up the miles, and the goal is to finish. We don't have any time requirements. I look for races that are very user-friendly, beginner-friendly, that allow people to go at whatever pace they can go. And the group is a lot of fun. People gain a lot.
Camaraderie. I understand. This year the girls had little skirts.
Yes. And it's called, the group is called Training for More. And the reason is the first year we did it, our goal was to complete the More Magazine half marathon. And More Magazine is for women over 40. And I thought, well, this will be exciting for women over 40 to encourage them to get themselves out of their comfort zone. Right, and then younger women said, but I want to do it too. And I can't turn anybody away. So I said, sure, we can just all do it. And that's why we called it Training for More, training for that More half marathon, but it was
training for more within yourself.
So much more than that. And the amazing things that happen when women get together and do this. And sometimes men ask me if they can join the group, and we've decided, no, we don't want any men. No men, and we're okay to be sexist like that.
This is our time. And I know, I love the flexibility of it, you know, where you can do what you can do when you can do it, and with whomever you can do it. And
we have certain times during the week that we all meet, and typically we meet at Cornerstone Fitness Center, who's very nice to let us use their facility to get inside out of the cold and the rain, and then we go outside. All of our group runs and walks are outside, but if people aren't comfortable with the weather, they can do something on the treadmill.
And you
or do
have
a different
things
day.
for them, don't you? I mean, you have like guidelines, and you have certain...
We have a whole training plan of the miles to do, and I bring all of my expertise and experience. I've been running for a long time, and so I give people a set training plan. We talk about stretching and strength training, cross training, nutrition, hydration, just the
whole package.
Yep. And then when the Shires Marathon started, this is the 3rd year of the Shires Marathon, and that is for the North Shire and the South Shire. It goes from Bennington to Manchester, and it started to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Shires, which was 3 years ago.
And we had...
And you finished it.
Crystal!
That's great.
Yep. We're so proud of you. Oh my God.
We had about 400 people do that. And so some of the women in the half marathon group said, well, you have to have a training group for the marathon too. So we started a training group for the marathon, and
That's great.
yep, 13 of the women from the group did the Shires Marathon, and then another 10 or 11 are doing the Vermont City Marathon, which is in Burlington this weekend. And then the exciting thing is, as people do this, they break out of their comfort zone. And so one woman went to Paris, and she did the Paris Marathon. Her daughter lives outside Paris, and so Mary Dermody from Bennington went to Paris, did the Paris Marathon, and she had a wonderful experience.
Well, you know what it does? It opens you up to all possibilities, because anything is possible if we, as you said, the attitude, the positive attitude is what does it. And you've been such a gift to so many women. It's wonderful.
Thank you. They're a gift to me. I gain far more from them than
we are gifts to each
they
other.
ever give me.
We do that. Lynn, this has been absolutely wonderful. I am so glad to have you here and to share with you. And we'll be back. We're going to have our audience. I know they're going to have some questions for you. So we'll be back with you in a little while.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome back. Now I'm here with Peg Gregory. Peg, I'm so glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
It's so good to have you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in Dorset with my husband, Judd. We live in a project of a house that we're in the process of renovating, which has been a something that he and I have done through the years together. We've renovated a number of houses. That's one of our sort of work-play things we do together. I work in the wellness mental health field, and I've been in that field for about 30 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time. 23 of them with the United Counseling Service, where I'm the division director for the North Shire office. And I have a life coaching business as well.
And what's the name of the business?
Peg Gregory Life Coach.
Now that's very original.
Easy to remember, I hope.
It is. Well, I know you are very, very loved and highly thought of in your role with United Counseling Service, but you're also such a neat lady. And you're just a lot of fun. And you're working on a new project, aren't you?
Well, I'm really getting very interested in the idea of play, and the more that I work in this field and the more that I see how important that is to our well-being, I was developing an idea about creating a seminar that looked at what is play, why do we stop playing, especially as adult women. We have a very hard time finding play in our lives, and the idea is that the seminar would focus on how do we rediscover that and get that back in our lives.
Yeah, and play can be, what can play be? Play can be almost anything, right, that we enjoy?
Absolutely. Play isn't about a thing, it's really more about an experience. It's about the emotion that we have in engaging in an activity. So to define play, actually there's a wonderful researcher, Stuart Brown, who says defining play is a little bit like explaining a joke. But then he goes on to describe it and try to define it. And essentially play is something that has absolutely no obvious purpose. It's something that we engage in for its own pleasure. We do it completely voluntarily. It's inherently attractive to us. And they're activities where we tend to lose a sense of time when we're engaged in them. We just enjoy being in them so much. And we also have a real diminished sense of self-awareness. We are not self-conscious when we're playing.
We're not focusing on ourselves. We're focusing
on that
enjoying
activity.
that experience.
We're completely immersed in it. So for example, if you were dancing and it was truly play for you, you wouldn't be concerned about, am I doing this right? How do I look? Am I embarrassing myself? Right, play is very free-flowing. It also has a quality of improvisation almost, or being open to serendipity. So if we're really playing at an activity, we don't go at it with very rigid rules and the idea of an outcome. We're engaging in it for the pleasure of it.
Just the mere pleasure of doing it.
Absolutely, and if, for example, you're painting and something happens with the canvas that you didn't plan, even our language speaks to this. We'll talk about, well, I'll just play with that and see what happens. And
rather than going crazy, you just go with the flow.
Absolutely. And that suspension of time really is that sense of being in the flow. we'll talk about that. It's a concept that you'll hear spoken about a lot.
Now, what is the importance of this?
Where do I begin? Truly, play is unbelievably important in shaping who we are as human beings, who we are as any creature on the planet, actually. Play seems to be the catalyst that actually shapes our brains. It helps us to develop social connections. It helps us understand how to relate to and interact with people.
Flexibility?
Absolutely. The more a person plays, or the more a creature plays, the more adaptable and flexible they are, the more we have capacity for complex social relationships. It helps us identify what our innate interests and skills are, and then to develop those. It's really incredibly important.
And it gives us an opportunity to to discover things about ourselves.
Absolutely.
Which is really, really exciting when you think about it. You know, it really is pretty neat. And we were saying, when we were talking the other day, we were mentioning how today children are losing that. They're so structured, and they're so going from one thing to the next that they're not playing. You know, our kids, when they were little, you'd have all of the coloring things and the paper and the scissors and the paste, and they would just spend hours creating things and doing things. But today, you know, they're texting, they're doing all these other things that are technical, but they're losing that sense of play. And what's happening?
Well, actually, there's a wonderful story, a wonderful example of what can happen when people do not develop their play capacity. The Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech used to be, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, was known for incredible innovation. They had a hand in all of the manned and unmanned space exploration that was going on. They had great reputation for just amazing innovation. And what started to happen as their first crop of engineers and workers were retiring, they found that they started to really lose their competitive edge, and their innovation started to really slip. And it was a real mystery to them, because they were hiring the absolute best and brightest, top of the class, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, and they really could not understand what the problem was. So they underwent this whole process of exploring what was going wrong. And what they discovered was that the original crop of engineers, if you looked at their history of play, these were kids who were, you know, driving their parents crazy because they were taking apart the radios, and they were, you know, wanting to absolutely, how did things work, and putting them back together. And while they were then later hiring these incredibly bright and capable people, they didn't play. So
they didn't have that creativity.
Exactly. So they had wonderful capacity for developing the theoretical concepts, but when it came to some of the nuances of how do you take an idea from theoretical concept through all the paces to a real physical outcome, they were falling short. And so they actually started to interview prospective employees for their play histories. They were hiring people who had a lot of play in their background, particularly that kind of mechanical, taking things apart, putting them together play. And their creativity, innovation went back up.
Isn't that amazing? I know Google too, and they have play areas in their workspace where they can actually take time to play and then get back to what they're doing. You know, so it really is important, isn't it?
Well, it really seems to be what shapes our executive functioning. So that, well,
I think I better get playing.
You don't need to go out and play. It's essential. If you look at animals with the largest brains, play the most. So human beings, we've got these giant, right, cerebral cortexes, and our brains are actually literally shaped. We develop new neural connections through play activities.
Now, it's never too late to start, is it?
Absolutely not. In fact, with human beings, you know, there's this concept of neoteny, and neoteny literally means to stretch. So in human beings, it means that we've got this very, very long period of time in which we play. In fact, human beings have the drive and the capacity to play lifelong, and that's not true for other creatures necessarily. The longer a species plays, the smarter that species is.
Oh, interesting. Now, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, people are busy doing things like maybe playing a sport or doing this, doing that. That's not necessarily play, is it?
That's absolutely true. So it comes down to that idea of it's inherently attractive. There is no real purpose, no apparent purpose to the activity other than playing, other than the absolute enjoyment of it. So if someone is going about an activity to win, to simply to gain a skill, to get ahead,
or to fit in, just to be
right. It's really the quality of the experience that makes it play. So think when you sort of lose time, you lose your sense of self, it gives you a real sense of joy, and you just want to immerse yourself in it. You want to keep it going.
Yeah.
So for example, a difference between a game of football that might be more simply competitive, what you'll get is teams where somebody wants to win. They want to get to the end, and they want to. Right. If it's really play, what you'll see kids do in a pickup football game, if they're truly playing, they'll tend to try to create sort of even sides so the game can go on.
So they have fun.
So they have fun. They want it to
continue.
continue.
The competitive thing. It's just there for the pure enjoyment.
Right.
Now I swim at the quarry every day. I've just about started, but that time for me is just total. I love it. It's just me there swimming. Now, that's play? Is that play?
Are you blissful?
I love it, totally.
It's play. Are you doing it for the sole purpose of getting in shape?
No.
No.
Just to be there.
Is anyone making you do it?
No.
Right.
So I'm playing.
It's that blissful experience.
Yeah.
And what we find is the more we play, the more we become flexible and adaptable. Your brain continues to make new connections as long as you're playing.
Isn't that neat? I like that.
So it's never too late, and it's really interesting how I think that as a culture we have this sense that even when you look at animals, we have this sense that, well, play is really preparation for adulthood. So if an animal's playing, they're learning a skill, right? They're learning how to hunt, for example. But actually, what research would show us is you can take a kitten, cruel as this may be, and deprive it of play for its entire kittenhood, and that cat will hunt just fine. Will have no trouble hunting.
Because that's innately in them.
But what they can't do if they don't play is they can't socialize appropriately. They don't know how to get along. They haven't learned the rules of being a cat. They don't know who's safe, who's friend, who's foe, how to read social cues, how to get along. And that seems to be true for human beings as well. The longer a species plays, and even within the species, so the longer people play, the greater our capacity for complex social interactions. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, Daniel Golub's book, Emotional Intelligence. A few years ago, there was all this interest in emotional intelligence, our capacity for empathy and how to read other people, how to manage our own emotions.
Certainly make a better world, huh?
And it turns out that's more important in success in life than even intellectual intelligence. And those qualities are developed through play activity.
Oh, that's amazing. Absolutely
It's
so,
really
so
essential.
you're going to be working on, or you're going to be putting together a seminar to kind of address this.
That's my hope. So we all start learning how to play again and reconnect with that part of our history that it's very easy to lose.
Yeah, and I think especially as women, we lose it because we get so wrapped up in our lives and our family and jobs and whatever that we take care of business, you know, and we don't take care of that piece of ourselves and whatever. Oh, that's so good. We could go on and on and on and on here. But you know what? I want to leave some time for our audience to ask some questions because I know they're going to have lots of questions. So, Peg, we'll be right back with the questions. Thank you. Welcome back. We're so glad. I am so delighted to have you both here and have all of you, my wonderful audience. Thank you for being here. And you know, we were just thinking as we were getting set to start this segment that really both of you are really about the same thing, about us becoming the very best that we can be and releasing ourselves to be the very best that we can be. And that's really, really exciting. So thank you for what you're doing. Now, our audience, does anyone have any questions? Anyone? Crystal?
This question is for Lynn. I've been reading a lot, and you know, we have a restaurant. A lot of people come in and say, "I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free," and there's a lot of you know, things out in magazines about it. Also, what do you see as the benefits for that? Is it really something that people should follow?
That is a really interesting question, and like many nutrition questions, there isn't necessarily one answer to that question. Some people have to be gluten-free if they have celiac sprue, which is, it's not, they're not allergic necessarily to gluten, but it's an intolerance, and their body does not digest gluten, so they need to avoid anything with gluten. Some people could have an intolerance to dairy, or they could truly be allergic to dairy, to the point where it could be a life-threatening kind of a thing. So those are specific medical conditions why people need to avoid a certain type of food. Lately, it seems like there's lots of people who just think, well, you know, I'll just go gluten-free and dairy-free. I heard maybe it's healthier for me, maybe I'll lose weight. There's absolutely no research that shows that that is actually the case, that it's healthier to avoid those foods or that people will lose weight if they avoid those foods. I tend to want to, instead of narrowing down the food choices that people have, I like to broaden those food choices. And often I think people are putting all of these bad kinds of connotations on foods, and they're telling me, oh, you know, gluten is just so bad for you. Well, if you don't have celiac sprue, really, gluten is in wheat, rye, and barley, which are very healthy grains for us to eat. And then there is also that element of choice. So if someone chooses to avoid gluten or chooses to avoid dairy for whatever reason, that is a personal choice. As a dietitian, I want to make sure that they're getting all of the nutrients that are in those foods that they're now missing. But I do get a little concerned for people just throwing out foods for whatever reason.
Hi, a question for Lynn. You would talk about getting into exercising and starting to do that and walking and how that's really positive, and that's something I've been trying to do. But what would you suggest as an added thing to do? What would be something to help continue that wellness program and exercise program? What kind of exercises or activity would you think would complement walking?
So in addition to walking,
yes.
One of the things that a lot of the current guidelines are emphasizing, especially for women, and especially as we get older, not that anyone in this group is older, but as you're thinking about getting older, is some type of strength training. And sometimes when I say strength training to women, the walls go up. And some women are afraid they're going to get really big, bulky muscles, which is not going to happen unless you work really hard at it. But what we do get is more strength, which is important just for activities of daily living. Whenever we do strength training, it actually helps increase the strength and density of our bones as well as our muscles. So if there's any incidence of osteoporosis in your family, that becomes important. And it actually does help with weight control, which tends to be a concern of many women.
Really?
Strength training does as well. It's because if you think of our muscle mass as our body's engine, so the more muscle we have, the more calories we burn just at rest. That's really why men burn more calories than women do, because proportionally they have a higher percentage of muscle than women.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not fair, but that's the way it is. So
That's the way it is. That's what my little granddaughter says. That's, Grammy, that's just the way it is.
That's right. So, and especially because many people will walk or ride a bicycle or swim or do some type of cardiovascular aerobic type of exercise, that strength training becomes important. And there's many different venues for that. You could go to the gym and lift free weights or use the machines. You could do a Pilates class, or many yoga classes actually involve a lot of strength training. Anymore, you can Google things and find it on the computer, on the internet, and follow along and do some things at home with bands or just your own body weight. Stand up and sit down 10 times and tell me that you don't feel it on your quadriceps here. Yeah.
So there are simple ways of doing it. It doesn't have to be going to the gym and using the weights. You can do it in everyday living.
Right. Right. But that is definitely the next thing that I would add in is strength training.
And how frequently, like, are you supposed to rest your muscles, like you do strength training one day and then rest the next, or is it possible to do it every day? Is there a routine?
Yeah, the guideline is to wait at least 24 hours in between. So 2 to 3 strength training times per week on non-consecutive days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. That will work. And we try to get people to think about all the different muscle groups in your body, and sometimes it's easier to start from the bottom and work up. So you do some things for your legs, and to be balanced we do the front of our legs and the back of our legs, and then maybe we do some things for our chest and for our back. If you do bicep, the alternate one is your tricep, and abdominals and back. Yeah.
How much time would you say you should do if you're doing it like you said, 2 or 3 times a week?
Yep. It doesn't have to take a long time. Once you've got a series of exercises that you feel comfortable doing and you know how to do them correctly, it can take as little as 10 or 15 minutes. Some people like to take a longer period of time, and that's certainly okay, but it doesn't have to take up a lot of time.
But you do recommend that people learn how to do it properly?
Yes, that is important. And we all know how to walk. Most of us know how to ride a bike, but if we're trying to do some strength training and work on specific muscle groups, the body position that we're in when we do that becomes important. And if anybody has any lingering types of injuries, if you have some back pain or some neck pain, it really makes some sense to work with somebody and learn how to do that correctly.
How to do it properly, yeah.
This question is for Peg. I'm going to ponder how I'm going to play in the future and try not to get stressed about that. What do you play at?
Pardon me?
What do you play at?
What do I play at? Oh, there's so many things I play at. I was saying to some of the folks in the audience a minute ago, as evidenced by the fact I can't seem to shut myself up and stop talking about these concepts, even the exploration of learning about wellness, to me, is play. I could talk about it forever and play around with the idea of how do these concepts impact our lives. So even exploring those ideas for me is play. Another thing that I do, Sally and I laugh about this, as I've come to really become a student of play, I realize that those of you who might know me know I have a propensity for frequenting junk shops and rummage sales, and and as I was thinking about, the more I've learned about play, I started to think, why is it that I have so much fun with that? And I realized that when I was a kid, one of the things that we used to do, I lived in one of those houses where you get kicked out of the house in the morning, son, go play. And we would wander around the neighborhood and we would do treasure hunts with the neighbors, and neighbors who had barns, and we would squirrel around in the barns and find things and create plays with them. And so I realized that for me, some of that tag sailing, sort of stuff is play. It's reminiscent of that treasure hunt thing. That, and having been one of 5 sisters, we used to do dress up. So of
Oh,
course,
yes, of course.
it's, you know,
Remember that? We used to do
right.
that.
Consignment shopping. It's the best of both worlds. It's my, you know, treasure hunting and dress up all at the
So
same
you find that play is really something that goes back to, we kind of connect it with something that we did in the past that we really enjoyed. I mean, that's one way of reaching back and
That's
finding
one
the
way of
play.
rediscovering.
Or it's interesting how, as you say, you all of a sudden you're doing these things and you're wondering where did that come from. But when you thought about it, it was being back when you were a child. They were things you enjoyed doing as a child.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. One of the other important things about identifying play that I think is easy to lose sight of, when we play, it isn't necessarily all fun and games. So another one of my favorite things to do is kayak. You know, there's some beautiful, quiet little bodies of water in the area. And it is absolute bliss for me to go out in the morning with the steam rising off the water all by myself and, you know, a kayak around the pond. But in order to do that, I have to, you know, haul the kayak out, get all the stuff out of the car that's been accumulating, get the car configured. I don't have a rack, so it's, you know, put it in the back of the car with the hatch back up as I'm driving down the dirt road and all the dust is coming in. I'm realizing on the way home I have to unload, clean the car.
Clean myself.
Clean myself. Or people who love camping and the getting ready for it can be work.
So the preparation can be
There are
something that is not fun.
Right, there are
But
pieces
the
of
end result,
play.
the reward.
Right, we will do the work in order for the joy that
Yeah.
we get out of the activity. So important to remember, it isn't all just follow your bliss and it's all just bliss. There are,
It's like me going in the quarry, getting up at 6:30 and going down there, and it's freezing. But once I get in, oh, it's heaven.
Right.
You know, so it's the result of what you're doing and what you're getting from it.
The hardest part, the thing I loved most, was the time I spent with Lynn and her brilliant, brilliant coaching and the girls, 35, 40, 50 girls. The hardest part, this isn't a question, it's just a happy statement, is getting out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning at 5-degree weather and getting into the car. And once you're in that car, you can do anything. It's just fabulous. I will look forward to next time.
Yeah.
That is the most difficult part.
It really
and I
is.
think a lot of it is people do it because they know there's going to be someone else there. It's much different if you think, oh, I'm getting up by myself, it's dark, and I'm going to go out and run 5 miles in the snow and it's 5 degrees. Really? And and many women will get to the point where they do that on their own, but if you know Jay's going to be there, Harriet's going to be there, someone else will be there.
Someone's waiting for you. They're
Right.
expecting you, so you are going to be there.
And then we have fun while we're out doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Makes it
it is.
worthwhile.
It's not necessarily immediate satisfaction, but it's at least something leading to it. But then actually getting to that goal, which is really
Excuse me, I didn't
Yeah.
interrupt you. And the best part is finishing and being able to brag about doing it. What did you do to? Oh, I will, you know.
Right, and then you get the medal that you can wear around.
Yeah, you can
and
clank
show
around.
people your medal. That's
Yeah,
right.
It's true. And I think doing it, as you're saying, you know, when there's something that you're really not looking forward to doing, but you know that you should, or it would be better for you to do it. But once you do it, you feel good about it. You know, I know when I do my hip hop abs, sometimes, you know, Sean T, are you funky? Yes, I'm funky. I do him every day. But sometimes I don't want to. But then after I do it, I'm so glad that I did. And if I didn't, I'm thinking, oh, I should have done it. So I guess that fits into it too, huh?
Oh, yes.
Feeling good about
And one more thing, if you don't mind.
Oh, we don't mind.
I have to garden today, and by virtue of you telling, you know, to achieve a task, and then when you're finished, again, I did it. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go play in my yard today.
Hi, yes, thank you. It's wonderful to see you both, all three of you up there talking about these great ideas, and I've enjoyed working with Lynn immensely. And it is a lot about when I'm out there, I have a ball. I love it. I love walking by myself. It's very difficult to get out there on my own. I have a question for Peg. this whole idea of play. I mean, in my mind, I say, I know I'm going to feel better if I do this. And what would you suggest to someone to find new ways to play, to just really get out there and try something?
Great question. Well, there are a couple of ways to go about that, and one is to really spend some time thinking back and feeling back to your history as a child, and try to conjure up for yourself those times when you were really lost in doing something that brought you sheer joy and pleasure. And as you think about that experience, you're not really going back looking for things in a cognitive kind of way. It's more that you're trying to imagine and remember the experience of bliss and joy, and then what comes to mind with that experience. But to jumpstart play, there are a couple of things that you can do. Physical activity is a very important way to do that. Much of our play is physical in nature. And I personally recommend skipping. I think there's altogether too little skipping going on in the world.
Remember how much fun it was, and you'd hold on to your friends and you'd skip down the road?
That's the feeling.
Yeah.
That's the feeling you're going for, is what does skipping feel like? What else brings you that sense? And to simply visibly move your body.
Yeah.
And that playing with, spending time with young children. They know how and can bring you right back to play. Animals, bringing yourself back. I look at Ginger, my cat sitter friend. Animals are, spending time with children and animals, that really teaches us how to play.
It's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely true. And I think that we are just about at that time where we have to say it's time. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for both being here, and we can continue this. I think that we need to do a part 2, don't you? I really do. I think it was great. Thank you.
Fun.
Thank you. Great. And thank you all for being here. You make the show. My audience makes the show. And for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us. We've had a wonderful time, and we've hoped that you've enjoyed it too. And something I think that we all feel too is how important it is to be grateful. And we're very grateful for being here and living where we do, and especially with all that's going on around the world today in Oklahoma and all over. It just makes us very grateful to be where we are and to have what we have. And I'm very grateful that you joined us, and we hope that you'll join us again. So until next time, let's talk. Thank you.